Inside Pelican Bay, scariest prison ever crime documentary full episodes. Blood on the Yard. If you think this story will chill you to the bone, hit that subscribe button now. Like, comment, and step inside the shadows with us, because once you do, there's no way out. The Northern California coast is known for its rugged beauty. Towering redwoods cast shadows so deep they seem eternal, and the Pacific Ocean thrashes violently against the cliffs. But hidden beyond the trees and fog on the edge of Crescent City, stands a fortress designed not to keep intruders out, but to keep monsters in. Pelican Bay State Prison. From the air, it looks like a gray scar cut into the wilderness, an endless grid of concrete blocks, razor wire, and guard towers. On the ground, it feels more like a war zone than a prison. Here, the most violent men in America are caged together, their lives stripped down to survival and dominance. But this story is not about all of them. It is about one body found on the yard that set off a chain of events unlike anything Pelican Bay had seen before. It was the morning of January 12, 1998. The prison yard was cold, steam rising from the inmates' breath as they huddled in their cliques. Some lifted weights made from rusted metal plates. Others stood in tight groups, eyes scanning for threats. Correctional officers watched from the catwalks above, rifles ready, fingers resting just outside the triggers. Then it happened. A shout, sharp and guttural. The metallic flash of a shank catching the winter sun. Within seconds, chaos exploded. Inmates surged like a wave. Boots pounded concrete, fists swung, blades slashed. Officers fired warning shots, the crack of rifles echoing like thunder. But in the storm of bodies, one man fell. His name was Luis "Spider" Morales, a 34-year-old gang shot caller with a reputation so fierce that even whispering his name in other prisons carried weight. He didn't get back up. By the time the officers regained control, Morales lay bleeding out on the concrete, his chest ripped open by multiple stab wounds. His body was still twitching when the medics dragged him away, but everyone watching knew he was gone. Spider Morales had ruled one of Pelican Bay's most feared gangs. And now, his sudden and brutal death meant one thing: war. The investigation began immediately. Officers sealed the yard, herding inmates against walls, faces pressed to concrete, hands bound behind their backs. Metal detectors screamed as shanks were pulled from shoes, hidden in waistbands, even taped under arms. But none of the weapons found that day could be tied directly to the murder. Whoever killed Morales had either ditched the blade, or planned it well enough to make it disappear. Still, the detectives in charge of the prison's investigative services unit, the ISU, knew this wasn't just a random act of violence. Spider Morales wasn't the kind of man who slipped on the food chain. If someone killed him, it was either sanctioned by higher powers, or the beginning of a rebellion that could consume the prison. And Pelican Bay was the last place anyone wanted a rebellion. Detective Raymond Danner was the lead ISU investigator that winter. A stocky man with a weathered face and eyes that had seen too many bodies, he had worked in prisons for over 20 years. He knew the rhythm of violence inside Pelican Bay, the way tension built like static in the air before exploding without warning. But this felt different. Morales wasn't just a gang leader. He was a broker of power, the kind of man who could quiet a feud with a single word or set off a bloodbath with a glance. Removing him would leave a vacuum, and vacuums inside prison walls don't last. Someone always steps in, and they usually do it in blood. Danner began by pulling surveillance footage from the yard. Cameras mounted on the towers had captured the chaos, but grainy resolution and tangled bodies made it impossible to see who struck the fatal blows. Still, Danner froze one frame, a moment where Morales staggered, clutching his chest. Behind him, a shadowy figure slipped through the melee, moving with purpose, head down, blade low. The man vanished into the crowd seconds later. Danner zoomed, enhanced, sharpened. The face was a blur, the prison number unreadable. But the movement, quick, practiced, almost surgical, told Danner one thing: this was no amateur. Whoever did it knew how to kill in plain sight and disappear into chaos. Rumors spread like wildfire. In the chow hall, in the cells, in whispers across the tier. Some said Morales had been betrayed by his own men. Others claimed a rival gang had finally gotten close enough to strike. One inmate swore he heard Morales had made enemies not inside the prison but on the streets, and that the hit was payback delivered behind walls. But the most chilling rumor of all? That Morales had been killed not by another inmate, but by someone working with the system. A guard. The ISU brought in known associates of Morales for questioning. Each one denied knowledge, their eyes cold, their lips sealed by an unspoken code. In prison, snitching doesn't just get you killed. It erases your name, your memory, your existence. But one man cracked. He was young, barely 20, serving time for armed robbery. His hands shook as he spoke, voice low, eyes darting toward the door like he expected someone to burst in at any second. "They wanted him gone," he whispered. "Not just the other gangs. People outside." He knew too much. Danner leaned in. "Too much about what?" The inmate swallowed hard. "About the deals. The shipments. The money moving through here. Spider wasn't just running a gang. He was running business with people he shouldn't have." But before Danner could press further, the young man shut down, demanding to be sent back to his cell. Fear had gripped him too tightly. Whatever Morales had been involved in, it was bigger than the yard. Bigger than Pelican Bay. The autopsy confirmed Morales had been stabbed 6 times in the chest and abdomen. 3 wounds were deep enough to pierce vital organs. The blade used was slim, double-edged, and sharpened to a deadly point. A professional prison shank, designed for one purpose only, killing fast and quiet. But the killer hadn't finished quiet. The yard was chosen for a reason. A public stage, a message carved in blood for every inmate watching. The message was clear. No one is untouchable, not even Spider Morales. Danner went back to the footage, replaying it again and again. Then he noticed something he had missed. Just seconds before the attack, Morales turned his head as if he recognized someone. His expression shifted from suspicion to shock, and then the blade struck. It wasn't a random assault. Morales had been caught off guard, betrayed in the most intimate way. Someone he trusted had walked up to him and driven steel into his chest. By the end of the week, Pelican Bay was on edge. Gangs were mobilizing, alliances shifting. Every corridor buzzed with the tension of retaliation. Officers doubled their patrols. The warden prepared for lockdown. But for Danner, the question wasn't just who killed Morales, it was why now? Because hidden in Spider Morales' death was a secret no one expected. A secret that would take this case far beyond the prison walls, into a web of corruption, money, and betrayal that reached higher than anyone imagined. And when investigators finally uncovered the first real clue, it wasn't in the yard, the cells, or even in the surveillance tapes. It was in Morales' personal effects. A small, locked notebook hidden beneath his mattress. Inside were names, dates, numbers that looked like codes, and one entry circled 3 times in red ink. It read, "Payment due. Officer H." And that was the moment everything changed. The officer in the shadows. The discovery of Spider Morales' notebook sent shockwaves through the prison's investigative services unit. For years, whispers about guards being in on the business had floated through Pelican Bay like smoke, never solid enough to grasp but impossible to ignore. And now here it was, a name. Not written out fully but reduced to a single initial. Officer H. Detective Raymond Danner sat at his cluttered desk long after the others had gone home, the notebook open under the harsh beam of a desk lamp. His finger traced the circled entry over and over, as if expecting the ink to reveal more. If Morales had been keeping records, real records, then this wasn't just about gang rivalries. It was about money, power, and people in uniform willing to trade their oath for a cut. Danner knew the dangers of going down that path. Investigating inmates was one thing. Investigating officers was another. One could get you killed by a shank in the yard. The other could end your career, or worse. The next morning, Danner met with Warden Joseph Kincaid, a stern man whose neatly trimmed mustache and pressed suits gave him the appearance of military precision. Kincaid flipped through the notebook slowly, his jaw tightening as he read. "You understand what you're bringing me here?" the warden said finally. "I understand Morales was keeping tabs," Danner replied. "If this Officer H is real, then he's not just dirty. He's connected to the murder. Maybe even the reason Morales ended up in the yard that day." Kincaid closed the notebook, pressing it flat against his desk. "We can't let this get out. If the press hears about officers dealing with inmates, Pelican Bay will burn on the evening news. Keep this quiet. Discreet." Danner nodded, though inside he bristled. Discreet was a word that often meant buried. The ISU began compiling a list. Officers at Pelican Bay whose last names started with H. There were 7 of them. Officer Harold Benton, mid-40s, worked the SHU, Security Housing Unit. Officer Henry Logan, young, fresh out of the academy, assigned to Cell Block D. Officer Harlan Peters, veteran, respected, rarely in trouble. Officer Howard Ames, known gambler with debts that sometimes showed up in whispers. Officer Harry Olson, worked graveyard shifts kept mostly to himself. Officer Hugo Reyes, fluent in Spanish, often placed on Latino-heavy blocks. Sergeant Daniel Hightower, senior staff, commanding presence, well-liked by inmates and guards alike. Each one suddenly stood under a shadow. Danner began digging. He pulled overtime records, disciplinary files, union complaints. He had his team quietly observe who spent unusual time with which inmates. Patterns began to emerge. Officer Howard Ames was seen leaving a casino in Reno 2 weekends in a row, despite claiming sick days. His debt sheet from a known bookie in Crescent City matched oddly with dates in Morales' notebook. Officer Hugo Reyes had unexplained cash purchases, a new truck, expensive jewelry for his girlfriend, that didn't line up with his salary. And Sergeant Hightower? His name wasn't in any debt ledger. But his influence inside the prison was powerful. Too powerful. When Hightower gave orders, even the toughest inmates seemed to nod in quiet respect. Danner's gut twisted. If Morales had been working with guards, Hightower's shadow would loom largest. But the investigation wasn't happening in a vacuum. Word of Morales' death had spread to prisons across California. Within weeks, stabbings spiked. Old rivalries flared. In Los Angeles, detectives reported cartel-linked violence on the streets, as if Morales' death had triggered a signal only certain men could hear. And inside Pelican Bay, rumors turned poisonous. Whispers claimed the ISU already knew who killed Morales but was covering it up. Some said the warden himself had signed off on the hit. Fear and paranoia grew. For the inmates, this was more than a murder. It was proof that someone in authority had played the game, and when that line is crossed, the rules of survival inside prison shift forever. 2 weeks into the investigation, Danner received an anonymous note slipped under his office door. The handwriting was shaky, almost childlike. It contained only 2 words: check cameras. Attached was a time, 10:13 a.m. January 12th, East Yard Tower. Danner rushed to the surveillance archive. The footage had already been combed through countless times. But now, narrowing the time to the exact minute, he froze. The East Yard Tower, a position manned by Officer Harry Olson that morning. In the chaos of the stabbing, while rifles barked warning shots and guards scrambled, Olson wasn't aiming at the crowd. He wasn't even standing at his post. For 7 critical seconds he was gone. When he reappeared, his rifle was slung low, and his hands fumbled with something near his belt. Danner leaned closer. The grainy footage made details impossible to see. But the body language screamed of a man not following protocol. That evening, Danner requested Olson for questioning. The officer arrived in plain clothes, his uniform jacket slung over his arm. He looked nervous, his pale skin flushed. "Where were you during the Morales stabbing?" Danner asked directly. Olson blinked, surprised. "On my post. Like always." "You weren't," Danner said. He slid a still frame from the footage across the table. "You disappeared. 7 seconds. Why?" Olson's jaw clenched. He glanced at the photo, then away. I don't know. Maybe I dropped something. Maybe the angle makes it look like I moved. You can't prove anything from that." But his eyes betrayed him. Fear. Guilt. Or something worse. Danner pressed. "Did you know Morales? Did you ever speak to him?" "No." Olson snapped too quickly. Then he leaned forward, voice lowering. "Listen, you don't know what it's like here. You don't know the pressure. You think we run this place? We don't. They do. You either play along or you get crushed. And Morales..." He stopped. His lips trembled. "What about Morales?" Danner asked. But Olson shut down, shaking his head. "I've got nothing more to say." 2 nights later, Olson was dead. They found him in his car, parked outside a gas station 20 miles south of Crescent City. Engine running. Hose connected from the exhaust pipe to the window. The report called it suicide. But Danner wasn't convinced. Inside the glove compartment was a folded piece of paper. 1 word written in jagged ink. "Sorry." No explanation. No names. Just an apology from a man swallowed by secrets. And just like that, Officer Harry Olson, once a possible suspect, became another corpse in a story dripping with blood. The ISU dug deeper into Morales' notebook. Those codes that looked like numbers began to make sense. Dates matched delivery schedules for supply trucks entering the prison. Each entry had a weight, kilograms, paired with initials. It wasn't commissary. It wasn't food rations. It was drugs. Morales had been moving product through the prison itself, using supply lines and corrupt officers as couriers. Cocaine, heroin, even methamphetamine, smuggled in under the noses of administrators. The money was staggering. Millions flowing through accounts outside, managed by people who had never even set foot inside Pelican Bay. And Morales' death? It wasn't just revenge. It was business. By late February, the prison was a powder keg. Multiple gang leaders fought to claim Morales' territory. Staff morale plummeted. Even the warden looked frayed, his sharp mustache now peppered with gray. Then came the second body. An inmate named Carlos Herrera, Morales' lieutenant. Loyal, ruthless, known as the Enforcer. He was found strangled in his cell, no signs of forced entry. The cameras had mysteriously gone dark for exactly 20 minutes during the night. When they flicked back on, Herrera was lying motionless on the concrete floor. Whoever killed him had a key. Danner felt the walls closing in. 2 murders. 1 dead officer. And the notebook, proof that Pelican Bay wasn't just a prison, but a hub for organized crime. He called his team together. "We're not dealing with gangs anymore," he said. "We're dealing with something bigger. Someone inside this prison is running business." Morales was a player but not the boss. His death cleared the board. Now someone else is making moves. And if we don't figure out who, we're next. One name kept resurfacing. Sergeant Daniel Hightower. Respected by inmates. Trusted by staff. Present at every critical moment. His name matched the H in the notebook, though hidden behind rank. Danner began following him discreetly. Hightower's schedule seemed ordinary. Roll call, rounds, paperwork. But at night, his truck was often seen parked outside a bar known for cartel connections. And then came the smoking gun. Financial records revealed Hightower's wife had purchased a home in Sacramento. Cash. No mortgage, no loans. The payment cleared just 3 days after Morales' death. Danner knew he had to confront him. But Pelican Bay wasn't the kind of place you marched up to a sergeant and accused him of murder. Not without backup. So he played it careful. He waited. Gathered more. Built a case brick by brick. Until one night, while driving home on a deserted stretch of Highway 101, his headlights caught something strange. A car idling on the shoulder. Door open. No one inside. Curious, Danner pulled over. He stepped out, flashlight in hand. The cold ocean wind whipped around him. As he approached, his stomach dropped. Inside the car, taped to the steering wheel, was a Polaroid photograph. It showed Danner's teenage daughter, walking home from school. On the back of the photo in neat block letters were 4 words. "Stop. Or she pays." The final betrayal. The Polaroid of his daughter changed everything. Detective Raymond Danner had faced down riots, stabbings, and ambushes in his 20 years at Pelican Bay, but nothing compared to the sight of his child's face taped to a steering wheel as a threat. His hands trembled as he held the photo, the words on the back burning into his mind. "Stop. Or she pays." This was no bluff. Whoever had killed Spider Morales wasn't just inside the prison walls. They had reach, influence, and the audacity to come after a cop's family. For the first time, Danner understood the stakes. This wasn't about a gang feud or a smuggling ring. It was about survival. His and his daughter's. The next morning, Danner walked into the ISU office with the photo tucked inside his coat. He didn't show anyone. He couldn't. Trust was thinner than razor wire now. If a guard could be bought, if surveillance cameras could go dark on command, then who in this building wasn't compromised? He knew one thing: the corruption ran deeper than Morales' notebook. And Sergeant Hightower was at the center of it. The pressure mounts. Hightower carried himself like a king inside Pelican Bay. He strode down the tiers with easy confidence, nodding to inmates, trading quiet jokes with officers. Where others showed fear, he radiated control. That control, Danner realized, came from knowing something no one else did. The game was fixed. But proving it was another matter. Danner began shadowing Hightower's routines, not openly but by tracing paperwork, matching timesheets against deliveries, watching footage of supply trucks. A pattern emerged. Every major shipment into the prison, food, cleaning supplies, uniforms, coincided with gaps in surveillance, with doors mysteriously unlocked, with sudden overtime requests from guards under Hightower's command. The drugs Morales had tracked in his notebook weren't guesses. They were shipments carefully funneled through state supply chains, protected by the very men sworn to guard against them. And now that Morales was gone, someone else was consolidating that empire. A deadly message. The second warning came fast. Danner's daughter, Emma, didn't come home from school one Thursday. His heart hammered as he sped to the police station, ready to file a missing persons report. But before he could step inside, his phone buzzed. A text. No number. Just a photo. Emma sitting on a swing in a deserted park, looking confused but unharmed. Underneath, "Keep playing hero. She disappears." Danner slammed the phone against the dashboard. Rage burned through him hotter than fear. They weren't just warning him. They were proving they could reach her anytime, anywhere. He realized then that waiting, gathering evidence, playing by the book, it was all useless. The longer he played it safe, the closer his daughter came to vanishing forever. He had one choice left: take Hightower down fast no matter the cost. Setting the trap. Danner needed proof strong enough to pierce the shield of the prison system, the union, and the silence of terrified inmates. A confession. A recording. Something undeniable. He turned to the only ally he had left, a man on the inside. Ramon Delgado. Delgado was a mid-level inmate, sharp-eyed and sharp-tongued, who had once run errands for Morales. He had nothing to gain from Morales's death, and everything to lose. With Morales gone, Delgado's protection had vanished. "Why me?" Delgado asked when Danner slipped into his cell during night rounds. "Because you're still breathing," Danner said. "And because you know things that can get you killed." Delgado smirked, but the flicker of fear in his eyes betrayed him. Together they struck a deal. Delgado would approach Hightower under the pretense of offering loyalty, a willingness to move product, a chance to prove his worth. In return, Danner would plant a wire. If Hightower spoke carelessly, if he admitted even a fraction of his operation, Danner would have what he needed: the wire. 2 days later, Delgado walked into the SHU yard during Hightower's shift. Hidden under his sleeve was a recording device no bigger than a coin, patched into ISU's monitors. Danner sat in a surveillance room, headphones pressing against his ears, every nerve taut. The audio crackled. Footsteps. Delgado's low voice. "You lost Morales. You lost Herrera. Someone needs to keep things moving. I can make myself useful." Silence stretched. Then came Hightower's gravelly voice. "You think you're smart, Delgado. But smart men don't survive in here. They get greedy and greed gets them killed." Delgado pressed. "I'm not greedy. I'm loyal. All I ask is a seat at the table." Hightower chuckled, a dark sound. "The table isn't for you. It wasn't for Morales either. He forgot who really runs this place. He thought he was a boss. He was a pawn. And pawns are expendable." Danner's breath caught. There it was, a confession hidden in metaphor. Proof that Hightower had orchestrated Morales's fall. But then the tape shifted. "You're wearing a wire, aren't you?" Hightower said suddenly. Delgado froze. "What?" "Take off your shirt." The sound of fabric rustling filled Danner's headphones. Then a metallic click. The line went dead. The riot. Within hours, Pelican Bay exploded. Word spread that Delgado had been pulled from the yard, bleeding, barely alive. Some said Hightower had caught him wearing the wire. Others claimed Delgado had been planted by ISU as bait. Either way, the gang smelled blood. Cells erupted with shouts. Metal clanged. Fires lit. Guards scrambled as inmates flooded the tiers, turning the prison into a battlefield. From his office, Danner heard the alarms blare. He grabbed his badge, his sidearm, and raced into the chaos. Smoke filled the corridors. Inmates pounded on doors, hurling curses. Officers in riot gear struggled to push back the tide, batons cracking against flesh. But through the chaos, Danner saw one figure moving calmly, almost serenely. Hightower. He wasn't fighting. He wasn't panicked. He was walking through the storm as if he owned it. And in that moment, Danner knew Hightower wasn't just part of the system. He was the system. The confrontation. Danner followed him into the administrative wing, where the smoke thinned and the noise dulled. "Hightower," he barked. The sergeant turned, his face calm, almost amused. "You should have listened, Ray," Hightower said. "You've got a good kid. Shame if she grows up without a father." Rage surged through Danner. He raised his weapon. "You threatened my daughter." Hightower smirked. "I kept her safe. Safer than you ever could. Think about it, Morales was a liability. He was leaking names, making deals that didn't belong to him. I cleaned up the mess. I keep order in this place. Without me, Pelican Bay burns every week." "You killed Morales?" Danner snapped. "I allowed Morales to be killed," Hightower corrected. "There's a difference." He broke the chain. "I reminded everyone where it leads." Danner's finger tightened on the trigger. But before he could act, Hightower raised his hand slowly. "You pull that trigger, Ray, your daughter disappears. You walk away now, she lives a long, happy life. That's the deal. That's the choice. The breaking point." Danner's heart pounded. He thought of Emma, her laugh, her dreams of leaving Crescent City, the way she called him dad when she was scared. He couldn't gamble her life. Not like this. But if he let Hightower walk away, Pelican Bay would remain a kingdom of blood. More inmates would die. More officers would fall. And one day, Emma would grow up in a world ruled by men like him. He lowered the gun slightly, his voice shaking. You think you've won. But sooner or later, the truth comes out. Hightower smiled thinly. Truth is what we say it is. Then, from behind, a noise cut through the tension. The sharp crack of a rifle. Hightower staggered, eyes wide, a bloom of red spreading across his chest. He collapsed, gasping, his smirk finally gone. Danner spun. On the catwalk above, an officer in riot gear lowered his rifle. It was Henry Logan, the rookie. His face pale, his hands trembling. He was going to kill you, Logan stammered. Danner exhaled, relief and horror mixing in equal measure. Hightower lay on the floor, eyes glassy, lips forming silent words. Danner crouched beside him, straining to hear. His last whisper was a name. Not Emma. Not Morales. But someone else entirely. Kincaid. The warden. The twist. The aftermath was chaos. The riot raged for hours before officers restored order. Hightower's death was recorded as a casualty of the violence, a sergeant killed in the line of duty. But Danner knew better. His dying word had opened a door far larger than he imagined. If Warden Kincaid had been part of this, if the very head of Pelican Bay had orchestrated the smuggling, the murders, the cover-ups, then Morales's death was only the beginning. Days later, Danner returned home, exhausted, hollow-eyed. He tucked Emma into bed, promising her she was safe now. But in the back of his mind, the words echoed. Kincaid. Safe was a lie. The haunting ending. 3 months later, long after the riot had faded from headlines, after officers were praised for their bravery and new security measures were installed, another body was found. This time not inside Pelican Bay. It was in Sacramento. A state senator known for pushing prison reform. His throat slit, his body dumped in a river. Pinned to his jacket was a single note. Order must be kept. And next to the note, a photograph of Spider Morales. The war wasn't over. It had just left Pelican Bay's walls. If you thought this story was intense, you're not ready for the next one. Hit subscribe because the darkest secrets are still to come.